The title of this panel session is VIS Conference Futures, Community Opinions on Recent Experiences, our current experience this week, challenges and opportunities for hybrid event formats. So hopefully you're seeing my screen, and what we're going to do today, we're going to spend a few minutes introducing ourselves. So I'm Matt Bremer, and I'm co-organizing this panel with Nargis Mayer, who's also on the call. We are from the VEC, the Visualization Executive Committee. And if you're just in the town hall, you probably learned a little bit about what we do and who we are. And over the past year, Nargis and I have been coordinating this initiative around hybrid event formats for VIS, culminating in this panel. So how we're going to do today, we're going to start with just a little bit of background information on how this panel came to be. And then I'll turn it over to our 6 panelists who will introduce themselves in a couple minutes and talk about what their recent experiences have been and their position on hybrid event formats for VIS. So the beginning of this panel, the discussion that led to this really started at last year's town hall event, which was the only hybrid event as part of last year's VIS conference in Melbourne. The conference was done in person, but that town hall event was live streamed and people could participate remotely. And there's been a number of discussions since then, both online in various forms and in various meetings on the organizational committee level about what should the future of this conference be in terms of its hybrid format. Now, over the past year, we started with a series of blog posts analyzing some past experiences with respect to the VIS conference and some community opinions on where we should go. So the first of these blog posts that Nargis and I wrote for the VIS blog, and if you haven't already seen it, there is a blog section of the VIS website. Do go there and catch up on recent blog posts. But back in January of this year, Nargis and I wrote this article on the blog about conference formats, framing it as a type of wicked problem where there's a lot of constraints and there's no seemingly one solution that will satisfy everybody. But that's where some of the discussion around this started framing around this initiative. Later in March, we looked at conference VIS attendance for the past several years, so including all the way back to when VIS was in Berlin in 2018, looking at who comes to the conference, from where, and just the implications for where we should host future conferences and where satellite events and satellite locations should be. We looked at attendance from the years that the VIS went entirely virtual, so the Salt Lake City year in 2020 and the New Orleans year in 2021, to that hybrid year where we had a hybrid event in Oklahoma City, last year when it was entirely in person in Melbourne, and now this year. Then finally, we conducted a survey over the past, spanning several months and early this year in collaboration with the VGTC. Again, that is the organization that was just summarized in the town hall, the VGTC being the visualization technical community and graphics technical community of the IEEE, where we collected feedback from the community online via various social networks and posts and emails to attract people to enter their opinions, both in terms of fixed response questions, but also open-ended questions about their experiences with hybrid event formats. So do check out those series of blog posts that go into some of the data, and some of the data will surface again in this discussion over the next hour. So now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and we're going to give each panelist about 2 to 3 minutes. I'll set a little timer here just to keep us on track so that each panelist can introduce themselves and their position in terms of hybrid event formats and what it could mean for the future of VIS. And we're going to start with one of last year's general chairs of the VIS conference, and that's Tim Dwyer.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, sorry my video camera isn't working. That's I'm not sort of making I made a point about connectivity issues that just happened literally just now. Anyway, so yes, in Melbourne in 2023, myself, Michael Wybrow, and Sarah Goodwin were the general chairs. We made a decision a very difficult decision after lots of hand-wringing for literally several years, that the conference would be in person first, which meant that we didn't attempt to live stream events, except for a couple of meetings. Apart from that, We did, however, record the best paper keynote sessions and some panels, and we tried our best to make the content available to people who wanted to access it. However, really, the two-way communication conference experience was limited to in person. The main decision for that was really, I think, specific to our circumstances, especially time zone was a major factor. So it's 6:30 a.m. for me right now, which isn't nearly as bad as Takayuki's time. I think it's 4:30 for him, but you can see that it's a pretty horrible overlap of time zones with our region and the US and Europe, and we knew it was going to be difficult for those people to attend in person. We didn't expect that we would have that many people trying to attend in person overnight. So that coupled with cost, the venue made hybrid streaming very expensive. So in the end, we went with in person first. So look, before we start, I am very sympathetic to the argument that it's that having some sort of hybrid format makes the conference experience accessible to a lot more people, and I can see that. And I can't. There's no denying that this conference is only possible given the extreme circumstances that, and I can't believe what the general chairs this year and the entire committee have had to deal with this year. So my heart goes out to them. But so not to diminish the Zoom experience for conferences, it's making things possible that simply weren't possible when we first imagined our conference back in 2019. And the other point I wanted to make is if we could flip the slide, please, Matt or whoever's driving. Yeah, I snuck one extra slide into the deck, which is the map of where our attendees in 2023 were attending from. And the big news is that we had nearly 200 people from Australia, 221 from Asia, and those numbers were much bigger than previously. So it was a real change that there were more people from Australia and Asia than from either Europe or North America. So in that way, our conference was more accessible to the people in our time zone and nearby than it had ever been. So I'm not really arguing strongly for any particular approach. Just that's what worked out for us. And I guess the other thing I'd like to say is that I think there's opportunities to do much better with the technology and for the VIS community to lead the way in visual methods of online communication. So that's all. Thank you to Matt and Nagas for inviting me to this panel.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I'm going to pass it now on to John Alexis Gomez is on the call, who's also our online communities chair from the IEEE VGTC.
Thank you very much, Matt and Nargis, for the invitation. So basically, to try to keep it short, I guess I have very strong opinions about the idea of having the conference or keeping it virtual or hybrid at the very least. I have experienced firsthand like the importance of this being from the global south. I'm originally from South America, from Colombia, in case you didn't know, although I'm always like introducing myself saying that first. And then I spent 4 years after working for a while in the US. I spent 4 years working from Colombia because I was a Fulbrighter. So that was kind of one of the ideas of the whole scholarship. And when IEEE VIS happened in Canada, I wanted to go and attend, and basically I was just rejected a visa without any explanations or things like that. Apart from that, living from Colombia and earning a Colombian salary, like attending the conference was around 5 times the cost of attending for people in here. And that is just for money, for bureaucracy, I was extremely grateful that actually that conference happened, or the conference afterwards happened hybrid, and it was the only reason why I was able to attend. So I feel very strongly about it, and I have helped also in the organization committee in terms of inclusivity and diversity. And one of the things I want to say is that if we really want to increase the diversity, especially from the global south, it is crucial that we start changing some dynamics that I feel right now are kind of focused on benefiting the privileged of us that can attend and have the money to go to the conferences, can obtain visas, and or simply like use English as kind of like the main language. So it is crucial if we want to increase these type of things to start thinking more on use on what will benefit the people that we want to increase attendance from. Because as it is right now, I feel, and I have had multiple experiences of seeing that, where the decisions we are making in the conference, it's actually are made to benefit the majority and the privileged majority. And that it as long as we keep on doing those, we are not really going to have a better increase on our participation. Let me stop in there so we can start the conversations, I guess.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm going to turn it over now to Petra, who's joining us from Europe.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, so I wanted to start with saying that I do struggle with virtual VIS. I have a feeling that the 2/3 of the audience is probably constantly tired attending this. It's definitely not an ideal format to be fully virtual, but I think we will have to do something because people will not be able to travel as much anymore as possible. Our organization is going to introduce CO2 limits on our travel, and there are many other universities who have, and probably many more who will, and we have to think about the fact that maybe not as many people will be able to attend in person anymore every year. And in addition to that, we just shouldn't air travel that much anymore. It's just not something we should do to our planet. And what I think we need is, especially related to what Tim said earlier, we need to move the conference across continents every year so that people can attend at least every other year closer to their home, perhaps by train. If you're in Europe, that's relatively simple. But even just a shorter trip would already be great for many, many people. Instead of having the conference always, many, many times in the US, I think instead people who can travel, they could start having more local events. I can later tell you a little bit about an event we organized last year. We called Pre-VIS, where people met, where we invited people who were in train distance from Paris and who came and presented their VIS papers sort of to practice their point. And it would be great if such a model for these local events would receive support from main VIS. And what's particularly important is that it needs to be simple to organize for volunteers, and it needs to be simple in terms of finances. And if there's some support from VIS, even if it's just a few $100 or euros, that already helps to buy a little bit of food or rent a room or something like that. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Petra. Okay, now we're going to move where it's very early in the morning for Takayuki, who's joining us from Japan, and he can also speak to his experience with the Pacific VIS community.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Takayuki Ito from Japan. So I'm very supportive to have hybrid conference because it solves many problems such as expense. Even for Asian people, it's sometimes very expensive to go Europe or United States. So it's very difficult to take many students. So hybrid event can involve such kind of student and motivate them. So, and then it's a very good opportunity to have such kind of experiences. And also the hybrid conference can solve personal travel difficulties such as this handicap or small kids or something like that. And also the even in some Asian country, they have serious problem of visa. Actually, some Chinese friends of mine gave up to visit Florida due to visa problems. A hybrid conference can help this kind of problems. By the way, I have experience of graph drawing 2022 during the pandemic. So the participant was only 20% was in person and 80% was remote. It was a kind of rare case, but what happened that it was successful, but we have some homework challenges such as a quality of broadcasting and also the small display space for the demo or poster presentation. And also the some people, especially from Europe and the United States, asynchronously participated. So it was difficult to interactivity or real-time discussion. And also the only 20% of in-person participants get social events. Other people, remote people, didn't get chances for the social communication. So this kind of challenges, I think, good. This we should be a good discussion for the future better hybrid conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Takayuki. Okay, at this point, I will turn it over to Elsie Lee Robbins, who's here in the United States, or in this time zone.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in this time zone. Hi, I'm Elsie. These are my personal views and they don't represent my employers. But I am excited for this town hall. So thanks, Matt and Nargis, for hosting it. And the whole VIS conference right now has made me really hopeful. There were two sustainability workshops on Monday that were really exciting. And I don't always feel hopeful about the climate emergency. The IPCC has said that there's a rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. So sort of where I'm coming from for this panel is I'm worried about the climate emergency. And even if we don't make that like 1.5 degree limit of warming, every 1/10 of a degree is important to try to mitigate the situation as best we can. And luckily, we can do something about it. We have this opportunity right now to reduce our air travel. And so I think it's really important that we consider the climate emergency in our discussions. And then the other point that I wanted to make was that we don't have to be limited by the ways that we've done remote and hybrid conferences in the past. There's obviously been some problems, but we should definitely try to keep experimenting and keep exploring new ways of networking, learning, and sharing information. I know these are all really important parts of the conference. There's a lot of different ideas, and obviously I don't have all the answers. Otherwise, we wouldn't need this conversation. But just some ideas are local satellite groups, more interesting videos if we lean more heavily on the remote videos. I know at Outlier, Valentina De Filippo had like a really great virtual video. And I know that these are some skills that maybe not everyone has to like make video editing, but that could be something that we have a workshop on next VIS, or, provide some opportunities to develop these new skills to better afford virtual and hybrid conferences. We could lean more heavily into deliberate small group matching to have more intentional networking. I know sometimes it can be a lot to have your camera on all the time. And I've seen some other groups do more of a low-tech style of like chat only, like the DVS Readers Club has a chat sort of function that they do where everyone's cameras are off. So there's definitely a lot of different ways we can interact with each other. We can introduce more games and fun, have like a Viz trivia night or something at the conferences. And then finally, we can have more buy-in from physical participants if we do a hybrid approach, we'll need them to engage with the virtual participants as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie. So our final panelist is Andrew McNutt, who's joining us from Utah.
Howdy. VIS has had an interesting opportunity to try out a whole bunch of different formats in the last 5 years, ranging from some hybrid to virtual and like kind of lots of stuff in between. And, you know, we've been highlighting that there are kind of different pros and cons into each of these. Like, for instance, like having VIS in Australia, like allowed us to foment community, and like having VIS be virtual allowed us to like be like accessible to lots of people all over the world and like reduce CO2 costs and so on. And so what if I were to tell you that there was a format that allowed us to do all of these things without giving up like our big community? In particular, like, you know, the Discord has already kind of jumped to this conclusion, but the thing that I want to hype is federated or multi-hub style conferences. And just to be clear, what these are conferences that have multiple sites that are equivalently the top site. There's not a single main site with like satellites, the way there's been in previous VIS is, but rather there's each hub is its own part. They are equal partners. So you could imagine a VIS where there's a hub in, say, Salt Lake, one in Japan, and one in Germany, allowing us to like capture groups that we've not been able to access previously, like folks in East Asia. Like, you know, VIS has a big East Asian like community, and it's shocking we've never like visited. And so, like, if Australia VIS taught us anything, it's that like going somewhere allows us to like embrace new people. And then I also want to hype that these are cheaper, like, and simpler to put together. Like, I know this week I'm running a satellite here, and I was like delightedly amazed by how relatively easy it was to put together a satellite for 40 people. Like, I did it in about 2 days, and with, you know, a year of lead time, I probably could do something similar for you know, an order of magnitude up, like a third of VIS. And moreover, you know, you could fit it in a university rather than needing these like huge mega hotels. So like it decreases CO2, it decreases logistics, it decreases costs, it increases the potential for community. And then, you know, also looking to some people's comments in the Discord, this does risk isolation, right? Like, you know, you could say like, oh, well, if we go multi-hub, I'm only ever going to talk to the people in the US, right? Like, this is a bad reification of power. And so this idea pairs really well with something called the Olympics model, where, like the Olympics, there's only every so often a single site international event where we still have all of the, you know, normal VIS stuff that we're familiar with now. And then in the alternate years, we can foment community and try out new locations. Like, what if VIS was in South Africa? Like, who would we get to be able to come and participate who we've, you know, had the door shut on them before? And then, you know, there's also lots of other cool stuff that we could be exploring. Like, I've heard some cool proposals about federating across journals so that you just submit to any like say you submit to your Euroviz, PacViz, or Viz, and then just show up at whatever conference was local to you. And like, you know, you submitting to that was not necessarily bound to your submission. But, you know, I really want to like emphasize the power and like flexibility of Federation plus Olympics. But I'm also just happy to talk about all these things. This is great. Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so hopefully there's a lot of chat I see in the Discord already. We have a Discord channel in Bayshore VII, but also you may also see there's a dedicated panel channel. But we're trying to do our best to look at both of those Discords. But I think the Bayshore VII will be the one we'll probably anchor most of the discussion around. So as you can see, we've gathered panelists spanning the globe from multiple time zones, continents, levels of seniority in the VIS community. And we try to just gather a bunch of different opinions here. We also want to have this group here reflect on some of the community opinions. As I said at the top of this panel, we, in collaboration with the VGTC, conducted a survey earlier this year. So we want to spend the next few minutes reflecting on some of what the community said in response to our survey about hybrid formats. And then we'll open up to general discussion with those in the Discord. And of course, we'll probably come back to some of these common themes that came up in the survey as well. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nargis, who's going to moderate this part of the panel with the questions from the survey. Nargis?
Thanks, Matt. So first of all, thank you so much to all of our panelists for accepting our invitation and bringing your diverse perspective. We definitely felt that despite our community-wide survey effort and all the publicities and blog posts, we still didn't hear from everyone in the community, and we wanted to hear more voices and bring this to the center of the community in an open discussion. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start with 5 selected topics. We'll ask panelists to chime in on those, and we'll share with you the results we got from our surveys. But we can always come back because we'll have an open discussion right after this. And the community, you can start typing your questions as we are going through this discussion, and we'll get back to your question later. So first was, what is the appeal of hybrid or virtual with experience? And the top 3 motivation to attend conference virtually was no travel required, no in-person attendance option offered, and affordability. So with that, I want to ask our panelists to please raise your hand by using the react button on the bottom of your Zoom panel, and we'll go over who's ready for this point to share your opinion. Anybody wants to say anything about this anymore? Okay, John.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to mention that we don't have a visa option in there. And I forgot to mention in my introduction remarks or whatever that it was quite frustrating to see that one of our best paper awards couldn't attend the conference, like even if it was actually in person. So that's definitely one big motivation.
Absolutely. Visa definitely came in other question about one of the barriers that people mentioned for sure. But yes, we also asked what are the barriers to in-person with conferences, and there were many, but 3 top ones were cost of travel and accommodation, time availability, and for some people was their paper not getting accepted, so therefore they didn't have much motivation or funding to basically travel for in-person. I see Tim's hand up. Tim, please.
Hi. Yeah, one small point I'd like to make about, or a suggestion about a way to reduce the cost of travel is to make a longer trip than just going directly to a conference. And that was something we did for many people who asked us about how they could attend VIS in Melbourne. Was we suggested, well, to make it worthwhile, you really should spend a few weeks, not just 1 week, travel around, see the country, visit some Australian universities, some research labs in Australia. My planned trip for VIS this year originally was to attend 3 conferences, not just 1. So I was going to attend VIS, ISMA, and ISS, which seemed like a good use of the trip, and that works out surprisingly often, actually. That conferences are close to co-located. So for us in Melbourne, ISMA was the week after, and there were other conferences for other communities as well that were nearby. So anyway, that's just a small point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks. Andrew, you're next.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to that because I've been wanting to respond to that for years, actually. Who gets to take a longer trip? Like, a lot of the people who are coming to VIS are students, and like they have other responsibilities and don't necessarily have the money to like show up and like take multiple weeks off. Like, I would have loved to go to VIS and mess around in Australia. I've always wanted to go to Australia. It's awesome. But like I started a new job last year, and I couldn't have just taken like a month off to just go do stuff. And like it's great. That's like ideally, that would be, you can make these magical constellations of conferences, and like that is like a totally golden path ideal. But like that's also like not available for most people. And so like I don't know. I would have been happier to hear like maybe the thing to do is offsets. Like offsets are imperfect, but at least they're a little more democratic than just saying you should take a bunch of time off. Sorry if that's hostile. I don't mean it that way.
Ah, thanks. Thanks.
Just quickly say, sure, I'm not advocating it for everyone. Just if you can, it's a great thing to do.
Okay, next we ask people who wish to host a future VGTC conference must propose a virtual attendee experience. We ask the community's opinion around this. And we got 55% people agreeing to the sentiment, 29% disagreeing, and 16% neutral. So is there any other perspectives on this? Petra? Petra,
Yeah, I can briefly. Yes. So, for example, one of the things we were toying. So we were toying with the idea, and nothing is decided yet, to think about Eurovis in Paris, for example, much smaller. And we went out to some venues, and as somebody who's trying to find a place, just the logistics of having to figure out, will I have the money? What for this is really tough. I think one of the big problems is for conference organizers or people who are considering putting in a bid for hosting a conference. It's really uncertain how to do this because there isn't really any guidelines. There's no support from the IEEE or Eurographics or wherever you're hosting, right? Where it says, okay, if you want to host a hybrid conference, we will send you a technician. Here's the software you can use. This is what you need to ensure. This is what you need to ask a venue to provide. But it is really tough to ask this of somebody organizing or trying to put in a bid for a conference without actually providing the help to do this. And it's, from what I hear, already difficult to find people to host VIS or any other conference and put in all the work to host it. And this adds another layer that if we don't, if you don't figure out how to help these people, then this is going to be tough to find people to do this.
Absolutely.
Although it will be great. Yeah.
Thanks, Petra. At that point, we're definitely all striving for inclusivity, but there's always a tension. So it's really a wicked problem that is hard to, because there's so many interconnected issues here. John.
Yeah, just to mention, because I thoroughly get what Petra is saying then, and that has been my experience. Like every time I've been on inclusivity share and all of these elements, I'm always claiming for better solutions for addressing this idea of supporting more people from the global south. But then on the other hand, many of those are hard to implement. That's completely true, or they're costly, as Tim mentioned as well. But I want to just second Elsie's point. There's many ideas that we can come up with. And it's interesting because the problem is that when it benefits the privileged and majority people, then we are all about coming up with solutions. Oh, there's a hurricane, we need to go virtual. Yeah, let's move the whole conference virtual, and then we can do it. You see? So in a sense, it's let's use our creativity. What if we start designing a new award or something that people can get when they propose the next best hybrid interaction method or whatever for us to support all of these elements. So we definitely need to start proposing and experimenting. I mean, that's part of what we are commonly doing in this. So why not doing also in the conference?
Perfect. Thanks. Elsie.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. Just to piggyback off of that a little bit, like how we have awards for best paper, we could have an award for best video and, sort of incentivize that development of those skills of, creating videos that can be watched in this virtual format and, not just the awards, but I think we could also provide some workshops on how to, help people make those videos.
Sounds great. Let's move to the next question. So this discussion already has started within the community, but we also ask community opinion on a single global in-person VGTC conference to take less frequently with virtual or regional conferences in between. And 21% agreed, 45% disagreed, and there were 33% neutral. So who wants to chime in on this point?
Did you have any additional comments from people who disagreed?
Yeah, I can pipe in here. So there's one risk, and actually this got reflected in the Discord as well, that like if there's a conference that's happening infrequently, especially for shorter degree programs, especially European PhDs, there might not be an opportunity to go to a single in-person global conference during the course of your study program. So it runs a risk of you not being able to network globally if you can't go to a conference every year. So that was one risk. And so I welcome any other perspectives on that, and there might be others in the Discord.
Andrew.
Well, this is where the Olympics model has an answer. So in different proposals for the Olympics models, such as the one that's being kind of looked into for Chi Next, the idea is to have it be sequenced kind of in step with like the typical European PhD, because those are the short ones or the shortest ones. Like my understanding is they're typically 3 years at minimum, particularly the UK ones. And so, if we had a single site every 3 years, that would guarantee that there's at least one international meeting for them. I think Chi Next is talking about doing it every other year, but it's been a little while since I've looked at their stuff. So I think this is something that can be got around. Like, again, like I said this in the Discord, but we're smart. We can figure this out.
Elsie, please take a bit.
Yeah, just one note on the that this sort of format would prevent people from globally networking. That's only if you think that networking can only be done in person. And so I think if we have these virtual regional conferences, we should also try to develop ways to network in a virtual format. And that way, some of these things can also be happening.
Perfect. In the interest of time, let's move on to the final point. And the Federated Conference discussion has already started. This was definitely one thing we were thinking about, and we came across Nicholas Elmquist's recent post. So we wanted to bring it to our panelists first and then to the community.
Can you briefly summarize what a Federated Conference means?
Matt, do you want to chime in?
I think it's already been defined a little bit by Andrew in this call as well, that there's multiple main sites of the conference. So imagine there's a Salt Lake, a Tokyo, and a Paris VIS happening simultaneously. And then you can have programming really around the clock.
Okay, but in the same week, just time zone shifted. Okay.
There are different proposals on how you might handle it. Like you might replay parts of it via recording, or again, Kai did a kind of interesting thing in 21, I think, where they had 3 8-hour blocks, and you were supposed to give your talk twice in 2 of those hour blocks. So I did it in morning Midwestern time and then evening Midwestern time, and didn't while I was sleeping at night. And so that's one model, but there's a lot of different sorts of experiments. This is really uncharted territory. And so having it kind of be splurged out across it is one approach, but there's a variety of them.
I mean, I can maybe briefly say something about this previous event we did last year, which was time shifted. So it was before VIS, but what was nice about it is that we could actually change the format. So we changed it to fit more what we wanted, and that was more networking, so and more discussion. So we, in contrast to the VIS talks, where there's a talk and then maybe 1, maybe 2 questions if people are lucky, we just had a short talk and double the amount of question time. So for example, we could do stuff like that, which was nice and gives people the possibility to play a bit with the conference format. I thought that worked really well for our purpose. So just as an idea.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Let's now move to the open discussion and also bring everyone in community's question to this open discussion.
And I'll also plug that we have the Slido in Bayshore VII, and we have Discord, so I'm looking at both. But I'll kick it off with actually a question that came from anonymous in the Slido, but hybrid participation. It has a term participation right built into that, but how do we define it or redefine conference participation going forward?
I think what is working relatively well is participation in the questions for talks. What isn't really working well is participation in terms of just bumping into people, talking about something you didn't plan, right? A lot of what I think makes hybrid and virtual so exhausting is that you need to plan for a lot of things. There's not a lot of serendipitous meetings and participation in just fun events and things like that. And that's, I think, what's missing for many people.
John.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it is very sad what's happening with Twitter. But when I couldn't go to the VIS conference, I was just so thankful that Twitter was there and that we had so many great members of the community that were kind of like live tweeting the conference. It was amazing. It was like to the point of what Johanna was asking on Discord. That was a great way of networking. I actually did a lot of my networking via Twitter, and I just posted, like, for those of you that are too young to remember those, during 6 years I did this analysis on who was influential to our community on Twitter, because it was great for having that. I think, for instance, Discord, it's amazing in the sense that it generates a lot of conversations, but it's very closed. And it is very similar to what's happening with the links that we have on the current program URLs, which are only accessible if you have like a registration or a login. So Kai, in that sense, has like a more open application. So I think that, like, to my specific point, is that we should maybe try to choose one social network that it's a little bit more open, and then all of us just go to that, and that will create like more presence. That could be one way of interacting and participating. I mean, and it shows that it's possible to do it.
Another question that has come up is like, and this is also echoing a question that I've always had, is like, what can we do uniquely as VIS, and can we take inspiration or follow the precedent of other conferences? So in the Discord, actually, one question that came from Georgia was other conferences like UbiConf, for instance, have separated the conference and publication. Would that solve our problems here by having a separate event that's just basically a networking event, a way to celebrate and come together and network, versus the publishing model that is separated from the conference?
How would that work? So basically, you don't present papers anymore. Is that what is meant then? You just come together to discuss, or there will still be abstracts like in some conferences, and you just discuss, emerging work.
I understand there could be various models of this, like as to what events actually happen at the conference, but there may be a case for not having as many paper presentations or paper technical tracks, because that is something that is handled elsewhere in the journal.
Oh, I see. So that's meant as a way to make no, it's not meant as a way to make the travel requirements any easier, right? It's just the hybrid experience might be better. I'm not understanding correctly.
I believe it shifts the focus, the purpose of the in-person event.
I'm not sure how that will solve the problem, to be honest, because if I mean, we're not really discussing any environmental issues or detriments to actually flying very much. And it actually, surprisingly, I thought in your review, in your survey results, it was very far down as a reason for why people wouldn't attend. So I think just completely changing the format or wouldn't necessarily help people solve these higher up issues of it's too expensive to travel, or I don't have the time, or all of the other issues. Actually, none of them.
There's also been a few questions about satellite events as well, and actually how to logistically run them. And what happens when you have a conference like VIS, we have multiple parallel tracks. How do you sort that out in a satellite model? How do you come to a consensus as to what to watch, especially for larger conferences? But for VIS, when we have these multiple tracks, how do you handle that? And maybe Petra, because you've ran a satellite event, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so actually I have two experiences with that. In one of the remote years, we took the entire team to a hotel and we watched the conference from there, which was kind of a mini satellite event. And we just had separate rooms, and then we streamed 2 or 3 tracks in those rooms, and that's how we solved that issue. The previous event last year, we didn't stream anything. We had people come and people we invited from close enough locations to our lab, and they gave live presentations. So everybody who could attend, who had any sort of paper at VIS, they presented, and we just didn't see any other stuff that was happening, just the more local things. That's, of course, a filter and a limit, but we did have the advantage of hanging out, eating cookies, drinking coffee, going to restaurants, discussing, having long chats about the research papers. And that part was great. We just didn't have the wealth of the content, of course. Big trade-off.
John.
Yeah, I just like looking at the conversations on Discord, and it seems that many of our constraints, or not constraints, but one of the issues that we have with having the satellites or the federated and all of those, it's how to increase participation and serendipity and conversations. And one of the things I have been thinking after doing like these new paper explorer things that I have been creating using embeddings, like here is a crazy idea. Like I started thinking, like the way I watch the presentations today was crazy. I was just jumping from one session to the other and having the live streams allow me to rewind and see all of those things. So I started thinking that it shouldn't be that hard to create it, and please don't kill me about this, but to create it like a personalized feed for each one of us, and where you could just go and watch the specific papers that you care about that are very related to yours. And then, of course, with a very human-centric approach where you choose which ones to watch. And then if we just move from a synchronized discussion to an asynchronous discussion, which is, again, kind of what we used to have in Twitter before, then it wouldn't really matter like which one you're watching. So that way, we could all just separate the time to go and watch the videos. They are all pre-recorded, and then we just held these asynchronous conversations. That could be one way that we can handle all of that. And again, if it is open and everyone can see that, it will benefit the community. You could also meet new people doing that. So I don't know.
Takayuki?
Yeah. Especially for young people such as PhD students, it may be an incentive to present their work in front of a big audience, a big large number of audience and big places. So I'm not sure if we can provide such kind of good experience for young people by organizing federated conferences. I think it's a kind of challenges.
Can I jump into that one really quickly? Again, piggybacking on Elsie's great ideas. I'm just stealing all of her ideas. Like, I love the concept of just like encouraging our new generations to be great video editors. So I think it's a parallel experience to what you have to do a great presentation in front of a large audience than to provide a very engaging video that actually it's more in sync with current tendencies in the world. So I think that could be like a good replacement for that as well.
So one of the comments in Discord that's picked up like some reactions is Mariah's comment about people that are not in the Americas. So maybe Takayuki, Tim, Petra can comment on this as well. Just the level of engagement that you feel being in very far removed time zones from the conference this year might be very different from how I or Andrew, Elsie, or Nargis are feeling the conference this year. Talks are in really far time zones for you. You're probably slipping into work mode during the day. And that's probably also true of your students. Your students also likely have other demands in their time that they're finding other ways to fill the time during the actual workday. So has that been your experience yourself or with your student groups being so far removed in terms of time zone from this year's conference?
Andrew, sorry, Matt, if I could. So it is a problem for us attending virtual conferences that are overnight. And we do slip into work mode. So, when we take a trip, it's sort of understood that you're not available, except maybe via email, and no one expects you to turn up to meetings. But, as soon as I'm off this call, I'll head off to work. I'll have 7 or 8 meetings, then I'll be teaching until 8 p.m. my time. So it's going to be a very, very long day. And so I guess maybe it just takes discipline. Maybe you just have to say, right, I'm at VIS this week. Everyone leave me alone. But I'm not sure in future that universities will allow their staff to just disappear for a week if they're not actually traveling. I think universities tend not to accommodate in that way if they see an opportunity to maximize workload and minimize costs at the same time, they'll take it. So maybe that's an argument we need to make.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I feel like I'm not particularly coherent now because it's 10:30 p.m. and I've been up since 6:30 a.m. And yeah, I mean, of course, when for us the conference starts at 2:30 in the afternoon. Of course, I have like 10 Chi reviews, a PhD thesis, and a TVCG paper to review. What am I doing with my morning time? That's what I'm doing, and it's not particularly good. Mentally, it just makes you totally exhausted. I think that's partly what I meant on my slide with that's why I'm really struggling with the virtual conference. And I know I've tried to remove all my meetings at least, but just the fact that I have so much other stuff to do, I'm trying to optimize, obviously. It's hard to not do that. But yeah, I think that kind of thing, local events can solve, right? Where we stay in one time zone and then yeah. And then we discuss with people. But yeah, there's downsides, and I really liked John's comments about this participation problem and Tim's comment about who can participate. And I think, yeah, and plus I'm a little bit worried about this fact that we're not really discussing all of the environmental implications of flying. And as somebody who's in Europe, I often feel that this is a very US-centered conference, and perhaps rightly so, because that's maybe where most people are coming from. But I forgot the statistics that if we move this to a different country, maybe it's not, right? Maybe that's just the way it appears. And we have to look at that.
I I seem to recall that there was some simulations in or referenced in Elsie and Andrew's AltViz paper. So I'm plugging that from, if you haven't seen it, they have an AltViz paper from last year that actually looked at like where conferences could be or should be, or maybe it was in your talk as well at AltViz last year, about strategically placing the conference to minimize some of those detrimental effects on the environment. We will be wrapping up in a couple of minutes, and I think leaving it on an open question, what can we uniquely do in the visualization community and the IEEE Viz community do? Is there something that our unique talents could be applied to make the hybrid experience better for our field versus others? Or are the solutions that we could come up with universal to academic conferences? So that's just an open question that we can continue to discuss. But I wanted to also just thank all of our panelists today for being part of this experience. I'm going to share my screen one more time so that I can put up some other additional information to contact us. There were also some questions on the Discord about how you can learn more about our survey and the results. So on the Viz blog, there's several Viz blog posts that actually indicate where the data, how we pose these questions and what the responses were. Again, contact information for myself and Nargis and our initiative along with the VEC to probe these questions of hybrid events going forward. We'll keep the discussion going, of course, in Discord. But again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to my co-organizer, Nargis. And thank you for, especially those of you who are staying up either really late or getting up really early to join us in this panel and talk about this important path forward for our community. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone on Discord and Slido for asking questions and posing your comments and experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.